A good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to round 8 of the AROC Racing League's historic championship this time out. We are here at Snetterton, bit of an old favourite here in the AROC Racing Leagues. Many a fun racing has taken place. One of the best battles I've actually ever seen was in the Juliettas a good few years back now, through Sector 3 between Alan Matthews and I believe either Greg Young or Will Inglis. Can't remember quite who it was, sorry, but a great battle nonetheless. So great to be here once again, folks, for round 8. Round 8, would you believe it already? Hasn't the time flown by? It certainly has, and we're now into the final third of this championship. Apologies that I missed the historic round a fortnight ago, a couple of issues with the server, but they are now resolved, I'm pleased to report, which means I can jump in and get in on the action here this evening, which I'm more than happy to do. 12 minutes to go in qualifying, or just under, and at the moment it is Matt Daly who currently leads the charge. The timing system's a little bit out of kilter compared to what you're seeing on your screens, so apologies there, folks, but I can tell you current fastest recorded lap, Matt Daly, 2 minutes 6.125. He has provisional pole. Colin Kneef just behind. Great to see Colin back in on the action. 2 minutes 6.267. Then it's Andrew Whitehead, 2 minutes 7.344. Then we have Andy Webb, one of our new drivers this season, 2 minutes 7.567. Alan Matthews, 2 minutes 7.864. And then it all looks like it should be fairly equivalent to what we're seeing in the sim as well. So Jack Hodson, for example, a 2 minute 9.344. Yep. So you are going to see that order change in the final 10 minutes or so of qualifying. So that'll be more so when we start to look at what the times are shaping up to be. But this is the first time on the broadcast that we are going to be seeing this heavily revised version of the GTA 1750. A massive thank you to Colin Kneef, who's put in all the efforts alongside Andrew Whitehead and I'm sure others in the AROC Racing Leagues, for putting in the effort to just give a little bit of a tweak and a bit of a revision to this car to make it just a bit more enjoyable to drive. It's fantastic to look at, and it was one of those where if you did get your head around it on the right track, it was a fantastic car to drive in the sense of it was rewarding to get it around the lap. But now we've made it a bit more drivable. It's a bit more raceable as well, so we should see a bit of a change in the racing sessions that we have this evening. Of course, our two 25-minute races, the second reverse grid, of course, and yeah, very much looking forward to seeing what these revised GTA 1750s can do. Already watching Alan Matthews' car there heading on through the long sweeping left-hander there was a bit of a bit of a remarkable change in just how much more stiff these cars are. No longer are they kind of cocking up a wheel. They still have body roll, don't get me wrong. It's not GTA 1750. It's always going to have that bit of dive, that bit of squat that you do need to get these vintage tyres to behave themselves, but it just looks so much more kind of planted and capable of going around a corner, which is what you like to see. And the other big change, I am led to believe, is the torque curve as well. It is too right that an old twin cam absolutely has to be revved to put the power down, but it was pretty severe. It was something I picked up on in the brief moments that I drove this car. We will have to do so later on in the season. But that torque curve was very punishing. Combine it with the slightly questionable handling of the old model, it did mean that if you lost a bit of speed through the corners or had a small issue, you'd lose all your pace. You'd have to shift down twice in order just to get back up to speed. It was a very difficult car to drive in that regard, but I'm pleased to report all is well now. So a big thank you, as I say, to those involved in mending this car. Colin Kneef is one of those who was involved and is clearly very much enjoying those revisions, because he's leading this session with a 2 minute 6.125. No, sorry, 129. He's closed up on Matt Daly, so Matt Daly still leads. Apologies, folks, but the gap is only 0.04 of a second. That is remarkably close between two of our championship protagonists. Of course, championships over the past week have very much been settled, and what a nail biter that ended up being. Well, the race itself wasn't, but just in terms of how the fact that we came down to 2 points, given the advantage that the McLarens had early on, was very impressive there. So very commendable efforts from the likes of Lando Norris, from the likes of Max Verstappen as well. But now we can get rid of the F1 chat and concentrate on the real racing that we have for the remainder of the year, folks. So do stay tuned for the rounds that we have coming up in the next part of the year as well. 7.5 minutes on the clock. It's still Colin Keneath who leads the charge at the moment, at least on screen. Matt Daly is currently out on track and will be looking to improve over the next few laps. Oh, Matt Daly having a very close one there. These cars, I imagine, don't quite have the propensity to just completely roll over anymore. And I've now had to refrain from laughing quite so much as I have at Knock Hill, to be honest. It was like something out of a comedy sketch show, just how much the cars just immediately fell over. Those of you who remember the old Top Gear motorhome challenge with that Citroen SM. Oh, no, it wasn't SM, sorry. That Citroen BX? Apologies, Citroen enthusiasts. The Citroen on the hydrogas with the big massive block of flats on the back of it. How much that thing would just topple over. There we go. That was these before the chassis revisions have been made. So Matt Daly nearly managing to replicate that, but just not quite. So definitely some improvements have been made so far, and he's still flying along, is Matt Daly. Let's see whereabouts on track he is at the moment. He's heading through into Murray's now. Very tricky corner to get right. You carry a load of speed. Well, you start picking up the speed as you exit Williams down the Bentley straight, and then it's all about negotiating it perfectly through Brundle and Nelson, where you've got to judge that braking to perfection. You're going to spit yourself off if you're not careful. Then you try to pick up that pace as long as you've carried some through Bombhole and straight through Coram, where your next big braking zone's Murray's, and you've got to make sure you keep the pace up as well, because that takes you right back onto the centre straight to start the next lap. Apologies once again if Andrew has very courteously put together a track guide for us. I, of course, would very much like to have watched it. I just, to be honest, completely forgot. But hopefully the drivers took something away from it, and apologies I wasn't able to get it on screen for you folks. 5 minutes on the clock then, and it's still Keneath who leads us on the screen, but I can in fact tell you that it is Daly who still leads the charge of that 206.125. That is one thing to note actually about Snetterton. It is the 300 layout, so it's one of the longer tracks that we will visit this season. Of course, we have an all-British track roster this year. The idea being is that we dart around the circuit, visiting a variety of tracks that those of you in your various AROC sections, such as the Northwest section, will be most familiar with Alton Park. Those sections in the Midlands will be more familiar with the likes of Silverstone, for example. The idea is basically all it's more Oxfordshire, I guess, than the Midlands. It's that I'm in the north. You must understand that everything below kind of Wrexham and definitely Birmingham is the south to me. So apologies if we get my references a bit wrong there. I mean, as far as some northerners are concerned, Liverpool's not very northern, which, look at the local economy, I can tell you it is. Anyway, 4 minutes to go in this session, you'll be pleased to know, and it is still Matt Daly who leads the charge. Keneath is back in the pits at the moment. Let's see who else is out on track. Who have we not had a look at yet in qualifying? Well, Jack Hodson we did have a brief glance at right as we started proceedings. Keneath is back out of the pits as I say that. Steve Knight dives into pits as well. So plenty of change going on at this phase of the race. I say race, I'm getting ahead of myself, of course, still in the qualifying sessions at the moment. 3 minutes to go, and we've got our 9 cars on track at the moment, all of them out of the pit lane. We are missing a couple this evening. I'm not going to go too much into detail. Guys probably not present this evening. All I'm going to say is get well soon, Cam. We're absolutely all thinking of you here in the AROC Racing Leagues. And 3 minutes to go now. So Keneath actually posting a purple sector at the very first part of this lap, which is interesting stuff, given that he's just heading out on the track. So a bit of a timing glitch there. I do apologise. Got ahead of myself, very much so, as we headed in to the final couple of minutes of qualifying now. Matt Daly, meanwhile, having a bit of oversteer there as we jump on board with him. He's currently heading around through into Williams now. And you just see the amount of speed that you do need to try and carry still in this car onto the Bentley straight. It's a given in any car. I think back to the John Dooley Cup that we ran a couple of years ago now. It was great to see some more historic Alpha Racing machinery out on track. And we can see Daly diving that car and going into Brundle with absolute bravery there, followed by Colin Keneath, his rival in the championship standings. This is going to be a great one, folks, as we head into the final few rounds. He says, as you can probably hear in the background, I am doing my hopes to bring up said championship standings as my PC's not had a great start to the evening's proceedings. Apologies for the small delay, but he's still very much in that championship fight at the moment. We'll have a bit more of a discussion about that as we head into the racing. Just a quick glance at how it's looking. Daly leads us pretty comfortably, although certainly within a round's number worth of points. It's Matt Daly 247, then we have Whitehead on 205. Whitehead's doing a good job in P3 at the moment. We'll be just wanting to close up a little bit more, I suspect, in order to make sure that his championship fight continues on. And then we have Colin Keneath just behind Whitehead, actually, only 15 points down on 190 overall. This is looking like, just like we've seen in the world of Formula One, gonna be a three-way championship battle as we head into the final third of this season now. I can't believe we're already into December. I do believe this will creep past into 2026. It will indeed. So we're going to be heading all the way into February in this one, and in fact our next round will be just before Christmas, so that'll be the 23rd of December. So not looking like we're going to have any big winter series to speak of this year, which is, I imagine, probably designed to make sure that I don't appear on track anymore, because no one wants that. Although I'm not going to talk about it too much because I'm probably not allowed to. There are rumours within the discussions of the AROC officials chat, of which by proxy of meter registrar I am a member of a bit of a endurance karting event at a newly established karting facility. Does someone say? Now that could be interesting. My background, as we do bring an end to this qualifying session, is actually in the world of karting. I started commentating alongside here with actually racing in the world of karting and endurance karting. It wasn't very good, but I did do some, and sometimes that's all that matters. So we could see Reeve on track in an hour capacity at some point in the future, but the timer has indeed hit 0. Keneath is going to be crossing the line in just a moment as he heads through Murray's and onto the start-finish straight, named after that fantastic racing driver. Purple middle sector on this one as he crosses the line. Keneath a 2-minute 5.881. Where did that come from? Ballistic stuff there from Colin Keneath as he tries to claw back this championship battle. It's starting to go the way of Matt Daly, but with performances like this, it could go anyway as we head into the final few rounds. That's remarkable stuff from the orange and black liveried car there, finding 10th, I didn't think it would be possible to because he already had such an impressive margin. Matt Daly crosses the line, doesn't improve upon that 2-minute 6.125. It is a little bit quicker than what it shows on your screens, folks. We still have another driver yet to cross line, do we? No, we don't, sorry. Whitehead has crossed the line. Alan Matthews is still yet to come, though, so we'll wait to see what he can do as they're on their final few laps now. Andy Webb's a little bit ahead as he heads into Bombhole now. Coram comes up in just a moment. We'd jump on board with the grey and pink liveried car. 2-minute 7.992 to beat. I'm still slightly in awe of Colin Keneath's previous attempt there. Into Murray's we go. The car leaning through as he tries to touch that apex, misses it and goes a little bit wide. That could cost Webb pretty big time as we head on to that start finish straight, and he doesn't abandon a lap. Let's see what he can do. A few more seconds to go until we cross that line. 2-minute 7.9 to beat. Does not improve at this time around. Perhaps no surprise there, but coming up next, it's going to be Alan Matthews heading through Coram now. A puff of smoke into Murray's, and we head back onto that start-finish straight. The last driver then to come across the line before the racing action kicks off. 2-minute 7.813 to beat for Alan Matthews. He crosses the line with a 2-minute 7.476. So that's a nice improvement there for Alan Matthews. doesn't gain him many more positions, but if he keeps up that momentum, he's going to have a really enjoyable time out there in the races coming up in just a moment. So that's it for qualifying. Colin Knief, with a blistering final lap, does actually take the top spot in this session. That top spot held by Matt Daly for quite some time, but Daly prevails in the... Sorry, but Knief prevails in the end. It looks like Colin was actually allowed to continue on for another lap, potentially. No, he dives into the pits. But that brings an end to qualifying then. What a drive it was for Colin Knief. This just makes me more excited for the race coming up in just a moment. So don't go anywhere, folks, as we go live for race 1. Well, welcome back to the action, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are on the grid, ready for race 1 of round 8 here at Snetterton. Just under 1 minute now until lights out, and it's going to be a good one, I get the feeling, folks. 9 cars are on the grid this evening as they run down into Riches Montreal. The first real overtaking opportunity that presents itself out on track, although we have seen a few brave moves around the outside at Riches here before, so it'll be interesting to see if anyone wants to pull that off on lap 1. Already here, those revs are rising as the drivers try to get the launches to perfection here. Very crucial part of the race, of course. And 20 seconds to go until lights out now. One of those grids which isn't staggered, it's absolutely parallel, side by side on Matt Daly and Colin Knief. Just behind, it's Whitehead and Matthews. Then we have Andy Webb and Miles Davis, newcomers to the series, doing an impeccable job overall, it must be said. Less than 10 seconds to go now. Those revs are beginning to echo off the walls here at Snetterton, as we do indeed have 6 red lights on the gantry, and we are away for race 1 here this evening. It's a good start for Matt Daly there. Knief clawing it back though, as he is positioning himself for the outside already. There we can see Whitehead having to hang it around the outside of Matthews, as Matthews already goes inside there, and there we go. Daly takes too much of the curb. Daly takes too much of the curb and goes up onto 2 wheels. That's cost him a lot of momentum. Quite thankfully, he's pointing the right direction still, so he's still in the mix in this race. But Knief now gifted the race lead, and watch out for Matthews, Daly. Oh, as Knief goes wide. No, he doesn't go wide, sorry. He goes too early on the throttle. Cold tyres, too much throttle, never mix. And there we go. That's Knief off towards the barrier. He's able to get back out on track. No one else involved in that instant, thankfully. But that is a shame for Colin Knief with a fantastic race start, utterly brilliant qualifying. And that's it for Colin Knief. It's going to be effectively a reverse grid start. He has to claw his way back up through the pack to try and score the top marks in this one. Matt Daly's championship charge has just been made a little bit easier when mere minutes ago it wasn't looking that way. It's Daly back in charge of things now in this race as Matthews continues on in second. Just behind is going to be Andrew Whitehead. Meanwhile, there's been a bit of a kerfuffle between Knight and looks like Paul Millman there as well. Let's see if we can see what's gone on there. Oh, that's a big one. Steve Knight tumbling off into the barriers. Paul Millman retires, and there we go. Andy Webb into the pits as well. What a shame for these drivers to have their race brought to an end so early on. This promotes Colin Knief up into 6th, though he's certainly out of this one all of a sudden. Meanwhile, Jack Hodson leads the charge in... No, he doesn't. Apologies, that's a bit of a timing error there. Matt Daly leads the charge going through Nelson now. Under pressure then from Alan Matthews as we head on down through Bombhole and into Coram in just a moment. Whitehead clinging on to 3rd at the moment has Miles Davis for company, and Davis looks to be on a bit of a charge at the moment, it must be said. That first sector at 23-second on the dot, 23.000, which is nice to see. Oh dear, that's Andrew Whitehead. You may have spoken too early this evening, folks, when I said these cars don't roll over as much anymore. Anyway, Whitehead's back out on track now. He's actually behind Colin Knief, so Colin Knief with that torrid race start through Montreal there has been able to cling his way back up into 5th now, which is a bit of a recovery already in just 1 lap. What a shame for Andrew Whitehead though, another driver in the mix in this championship. What they're doing is they're just gifting it to Matt Daly. Matt Daly is under pressure from Matthews at the moment, but it just brings so many parallels to another championship recently, which there were so many little mistakes as we headed into the final part of the running, which were looking like they could just swing that momentum either way, shape or form, and it was a bit of a game of roulette as to who would end up coming out on top. I hope for our entertainment's sake that we certainly get that this year, but I hope for all of our drivers' sake that it's just some nice, good, hard, fair racing. Daly still leads things then, 0.7 of a second between himself and Matthews. Matthews goes a little bit deep into the corner there, has to take some corrective action, is able to do so and continue on, but was looking a little bit out of shape there as we ran through Agostini and Hamilton. His running in second though is Matthews, still pretty happy with that, I am sure, as things stand. Davis started on the 3rd row of the grid, of course, works his way up into 3rd position now in this race, in a bit of no man's land, is always the case with 3rd in the AROC Racing Leagues, as it turns out to be. You're not quite there with the battling duo out in front, but you're a ways above the midfield to upper midfield section. So third place, bit of a lonely area out on track, but a good position to be in nonetheless as you fight for that podium. And someone who I get the feeling is very much fighting for a podium is going to be Colin Knief, heading through Brundle there. Just look at how much energy was being transferred through that vehicle there as we headed into the fast left-hander where the braking zone can upset the cars. Knief clearly not fazed by that in any way, shape or form, putting pressure on Jack Hodson now as he's closed up substantially through the second sector. We head through Murray's now. It's a great run for Colin Knief, who is able to keep on throttle just that little bit more, stays behind Jack Hodson for the time being to benefit from any slipstream that he can negotiate, and is having a look around the outside already. We head on to the next lap. We are going to be side by side. Hodson seems to have some great straight line performance though. That car seems to be clinging up to the upper revs very nicely indeed. Well, around the outside through Riches goes Colin Knief. Fantastic stuff from our championship contender. He heads into Montreal now, the corner where it all went wrong on lap 1, and it's P4 at the moment for Colin Knief. A great recovery drive so far. Let's see what else he can do. Another driver on that recovery charge at the moment is going to be Andrew Whitehead in 6th at the moment. Heads through and in to Agostini in just a moment. Palmer first though, as we have a 10-second margin between P6 and P1. Matt Daly checking out at the front end of the pack. This is exactly the weekend that he needed as we head into the final few rounds of this series. 12 rounds in total, of course, of this championship, which means I am completely wrong. It's more than 12 rounds. Do forgive me there. No, it's... How many rounds is it? You're going to have to forgive me here, folks. My maths is completely off. I'm very, very sorry indeed. Reeve's forgotten how to count. It was 13 rounds. I knew that all along. Honestly, I was just testing you all at home. Andrew Whitehead running in P6 then. So around 8 out of 13, which means that as we head into that next round, there's only going to be a maximum of 200 points on offer for a driver as long as they win every single race heading into those rounds, into the final few stages. So Whitehead really needs to start getting these podiums under his belt if he's wanting to take another championship. Has done so upon his return to the AROC Racing Leagues, of course, but I'm sure wants to continue on with that momentum. 18 minutes to go in this race, and at the moment it is Matt Daly leading the charge. The championship has done so. Going back on board with Andrew Whitehead and Jack Hodson. Whitehead finding a way past Jack Hodson as we head into the next lap, though. Into Montreal we go. Hodson not putting up too much of a fight unless Whitehead goes a little bit deep into the corner there. No, I think he's negotiated that quite nicely. So it's Whitehead up into 5th, Knief into 4th. And this is going to be a really important and really interesting phase of this race to behold if you are Miles Davis or a Miles Davis enthusiast watching along, because Davis in P3 obviously wants to fight for this podium, but he's up against the big dogs now. It's Knief and Whitehead just behind experienced AROC Racing Leagues contenders heading in to the final few rounds of this championship now. And Davis just goes a little bit wide there. That's going to cost him even more time to Knief. And Knief now absolutely on his tail as we head up towards Sector 2 in just a couple of seconds now. It's Williams to negotiate next there, and we can see the lean on the cars as we head on to the Bentley straight now, and Davis very much on the defence. Where is Knief? Knief is now side by side. It was a great run through Williams for Knief. That's not quite the camera angle we want, because we want to see this overtake, and Knief has found a way past on the Bentley straight. Didn't even need to do any brave tricks in to Brundle. Has done it on the run into that corner, but Miles Davis tries a brave move into that corner, doesn't he? Saw a very small gap, a sniff of a position to put the car into there, and absolutely went for it late on the brakes. It very nearly worked for Davis as well, if it weren't for the wily old fox that is Colin Knief. Very much reacting to that and keeping the car quite nicely in the defensive position to head through Brundle and Nelson, while making sure that Davis cannot find a way on past. 60 minutes to go in this race. Then Daly crosses the line to start the next lap. Matthews a couple of seconds after that, and it's these three drivers in quick succession starting that next charge. 2-minute 9.0 for Miles Davis. Not quite the lap that he would have wanted, of course, in that defensive battle. Lost a few seconds in doing so there. Knief heading on into Montreal now. 6 seconds the gap between himself and Daly, but I'm sure Knief's much more focused on Matthews out in front. What a recovery drive this has been so far for Colin Knief. I did say it would be a tall order, but if anyone can make it work, it's Colin Knief, isn't it? He's one of our most formidable drivers in this series, and he's put on a great show so far, apart from on the exit of Montreal on lap 1. But who am I to judge? I could do nowhere near as strong of a job in these racing cars. So Alan Matthews is the driver on board with at the moment. We will jump on board with one of our cars at some point this evening in order to get a closer look at how things are shaping up from a driver's eye, driver's point of view, shall we say. But here we go. Matthew goes a little bit deep into that corner, a squirm of oversteer and exit as well, whereas Knief was absolutely planted. Heads on through. Williams now taking a slightly wider run is Knief. That might give him a bit more of an advantage onto the Bentley straight because he's carried more straight line speed. Here we go then. It's Matthews who actually keeps Knief behind for the time being. Knief benefiting from any slight slipstream effect that might be had from these cars. They're not most aerodynamically efficient, but they also don't have much in the shape of aero on them at all, really. So it's you win some, you lose some in terms of the slipstreaming effect, in terms of the aerodynamic drag in these cars. Less than 15 minutes to go. We've got another great interior shot here, but let's have a look at what's going on outside of the cars. And Knief losing time through Brundle and Nelson, and Miles Davis having a look on past here, taking a tight inside line through Coram. It nearly very much worked there, but Knief positioning that car absolutely perfectly. I think they might have made a slight glance of contact there. No, they were absolutely clean still. So we head on to that start-finish straight. Davis has to back off this time around, but this is fantastic news if you're Alan Matthews. The more that Knief is preoccupied by Miles Davis, the more Alan Matthews can relax a little bit in P2 in this race. Big off there for Alan Matthews, who tumbles down to 6th in this race. One small mistake there sees him out of the running in this action. Matt Daly continues on in the lead of this race pretty comfortably now. This does release Colin Knief as well, so it'll be interesting to look at their pace, how it's shaping up over the coming laps. Miles Davis promoted back into a 3rd position, repecharged through effectively into a 3rd position, but that might be under threat now from Andrew Whitehead. We're about to cross the halfway marker in this race. We will have a look at how things are shaping up from a statistical perspective in this case. That's not too much for a tongue twister, but it is when you've got a little bit of live monitoring going on in your headset as well, because you can hear yourself ever so slightly, and it just makes things a little bit more tricky. Either way, Davis continues on ahead of Whitehead. There is Knief in the shot as well, and just behind is Jack Hodson as well. So everyone in the top 5 staying pretty close together, all things considered, but Daly currently leads us with a 2-minute 7.3 being the current pace, 2-minute 6.7 fastest lap overall. Colin Knief actually has the higher overall pace at 2-minute 6.6, so ever so slightly has the faster lap, has the slight advantage, of course. Managed to pull that out of the bag in qualifying as well, so it'd be great to see if we can continue that momentum into this race, and maybe with 12 minutes remaining can close up an 8-second gap. It would be an impressive feat, especially given that Matt Day, well, I think everyone's posting fastest laps. I think we've hit this phase of the race where the fuel tank has begun to drop a little bit. All the battling has kind of come to a stop for the time being. The tyres are still good, and as I said, the fuel tanks have got lighter because Matt Day just posted the fastest lap. So is Colin Knief. So is Miles Davis. So is Andrew Whitehead. Jack Hodson's got very close there. Alan Matthews had a couple of issues on that lap, unfortunately. But yeah, plenty of drivers now posting their fastest. Matt Daly's current pace and fastest lap had 2 minutes 6.697. Colin Knief, 2 minutes 6.621. Very close, but Knief has a very slight advantage. Can he close it up in the final 11 minutes? Let's see. Miles Davis, 2 minutes 7.9. That's his fastest lap and current pace. Andrew Whitehead on that previous lap with his fastest lap, a 2 minute 7.2. So a few tenths advantage to Whitehead there. A very slim advantage to Knief as well. We'll see how things shape up as we head into the latter half of race 1 here this evening. But we are on board with Andrew Whitehead, who's closing up on Miles Davis as things stand. And in terms of standing, let's have a look at the championship standings. A great transition, if I do say so myself. Matt Daly leads things, 247 points heading into this race. As it stands, that will expand to 272 points after this race is all said and done, if things stay the way that they are at the moment. Then we have Andrew Whitehead, 205 points to his name, hoping to expand upon that a little bit more, especially with an overtake against Miles Davis just ahead of him. Andrew Whitehead then, followed by Colin Knief, 190 points to Knief's name heading into this race. That will jump up. Knief will close up that gap to Whitehead as things stand. Then we have Alan Matthews, 166 points in P4 in the championship. Then we have Miles Davis, 146 points in P5. So as things stand, Davis will be gaining a decent haul of points here. We'll be closing up on the likes of Alan Matthews pretty well. Then we have Andy Webb, 96 points at the moment, so we'll add a couple to his tally and get close to that 100-point marker. That'll be ahead of Jack Hodson as well. He's on 72 points. Guy Swarbrick on 64. Then we have Steve Knight, 44. Greg Young, 30. John Cole, 29. Andy Craig, 28. Paul Millman, 24. Mike Hilton, 21. And Alex Smith on 2. That's all because he's no longer part of the Mito owners. Because if he had a Mito, it would be more. I don't make the rules. We do not accept bribery on points based on what alpha you own. All alphas are welcome. All alphas are fantastic. All alphas are brilliant. And there's no Mito registrar bias here at all. Either way, 10 minutes to go in this race. Matt Daly, he's actually got a very nice GT, as Alex. It's just funny. It's funny to mock someone who would relinquish the opportunity to own a Mito. Hopefully there's another one on your horizon soon, Alex. Either way, well, please take one off my hands. I've got too many. Matt Daly leads things at the moment. You'll be pleased to know we're going to get back to the racing action with a comfortable 8-second margin, and is actually looking at a way past Steve Knight here. I imagine the safest opportunity is going to be right now out of Williams and onto the Bentley straight, and there we can see Daly alongside Knight already. Should get a nose out in front, should be pretty comfortable there, and continues on lapping his first driver of the session. But actually Steve Knight got some great straight line performance here, has the inside for Brundle potentially. No, it looks like Daly's got the upper hand, heads on through Brundle and Nelson, and comfortably leads the charge into the final stages of this race now. Bit of a moment there for Miles Davis. He does just about collect it. That's heading through Nelson there. Any small mistakes like that could play a huge benefit to the likes of Andrew Whitehead just behind him. Although it must be said, Davis doing a remarkable job of keeping Whitehead behind for the time being. Whitehead in 4th, Davis in 3rd, and that gap has not really changed. I do get the feeling that Davis is certainly struggling with the car at this point. I wonder if the tyres are now beginning to drop off as Knief's also struggling with the car. He loses time to Matt Daly, and all of a sudden his hopes of clawing back victory in this one dashed, as he will now be looking to settle for a podium instead. Still a decent haul of points, but not where he wanted to be after that impressive qualifying performance. Meanwhile, Miles Davis in 3rd. Whitehead looks to have his own issues in Sector 3 as well, and the gap remains pretty consistent. As I say, I get the feeling these cars now not quite as comfortable to drive as they were mere minutes or laps ago. Davis losing time, big time actually, into Montreal here, and watch out for Andrew Whitehead, who's now having a look, heading through Palmer. Is going to head round the left-hander, slightly tighter line for Andrew Whitehead. In fact, a much tighter line as we run down into Agostini, the next left-hander coming up. This is going to be a great opportunity now for Whitehead. Previous champion, of course, in this series, has a slight disadvantage in terms of track position, but has the inside line. The nose was behind, but he has that inside. I should phrase that a little bit better. And it's going to be a drag race now as we head down towards Hamilton. Inside for Whitehead. but Davis can keep that speed up as he now heads down towards Williams in just a moment. Has the inside for the right-hander here. This could be anyone's game. Rides the sausage curve, but does Miles Davis. This is a great battle of one of the narrower parts of this already narrow circuit. But here goes Miles Davis trying to claw back to the position, but Andrew Whitehead is now going to be the attacking driver as we head down the Bentley Straight. And all of this, Colin Keneath is not escaping, it must be said. These two are doing a remarkable job of keeping up with the second place driver here. As it stands, Davis is in third. He just about clings on to third, but have a look for Andrew Whitehead, who has a brief moment around the outside here and is going to have to settle, I suspect, for third position for the time being, or for at least the next couple of corners. This is a great little drive, a great little battle going on between these two drivers. It is very much the teacher versus the student in this regard, as we see Miles Davis continues on in third, Whitehead clinging it on to fourth for the time being, but I suspect could be closing up if things go his way in the next lap or so. We head back onto the centre straight then, the order remaining the same. Jack Hodson in the background, Matt Daly still leads the charge, he's heading into Montreal, and then our closest battle out on track at the moment between Miles Davis and Andrew Whitehead. Daly still leads the charge, he's heading into Montreal. Final 5 minutes of this race, and I do get the slight impression that they are beginning to slow themselves down in the midst of battle. 2 minutes 7, the predicted lap time this time around. Miles Davis pushing on in third. 2 minutes 6 is it now actually standard predicted. It was a great little run through the final couple of corners, but that last lap was a 2 minute 9, which does mean that they have potentially disadvantaged themselves in terms of the defensive battle, but it was a great one to behold, so no complaints from myself. The predicted lap 1. And we head back onto the Bentley Straight now. Whitehead looking even closer than before. In fact, gets a great run, benefits from that slipstream, has the momentum, is going to get the car out in front and on the inside, crucially, into Brundle before we head into the slight left-handed kink. And there we go. Davis is going to absolutely fight tooth and nail for this one, but carries a bit too much oversteer through Nelson. Has to hang it back for the time being. It's Whitehead in third as we head through Bombhole now. Bombhole, a fantastic corner complex because it's all about getting the most out of your front end of your car here, because it can really punish you if you do push out wide. Watch out for the Juliettons in a week's time with those front-wheel drive based cars. But Davis, he lost the position, but he's very much, perhaps most importantly, clung onto the rear axle of the GCA 1750 directly in front of him. We head on to the centre straight once again, and Davis within half a second of his rival as we start the next lap. We can see in the foreground there, Colin Keneath encountering a little bit of lapped traffic there. Looks like we won't have much lapped traffic, perhaps not too much of a surprise given the longer nature of this circuit. But 2.5 minutes left on the clock. Whitehead remaining ahead of Davis for the time being. What a fight that was in the end. But everyone at the top end of the pack in this run having a couple of issues at the start of this race. So for their sakes, oh dear, as Miles Davis touches that curb there. I was completely wrong about these cars. No one's rolled over apart from Steve Knight earlier on, I believe. Might have been Paul Millen, in fact. No one's had a complete rollover, but there have been a few close calls, haven't there, overall? I mean, we look further back as Andy Webb was involved in that skirmish at the very first part of this race. Unfortunately, after repairs, he was pretty much in a lonesome 7th after this one. Is still on the lead lap. Is looking likely to be lapped at any point in this race. So we'll just push on in 7th, pick up a couple of points for his troubles as we look past the ominous onlookers. They've returned from Silverstone, folks. They are worst at Silverstone as they sit in the grandstands, but they are still here at Snetterton. You'll see them dotted around the circuit, particularly as we run through Coram there. We might see them on a few more. There they are. There they are. Look at them. They just... They creep me out completely. They're looking deeply into the camera. A vast array of 2D sprites there, just looking directly into the camera. Very off-putting. Certainly hasn't put off Matt Daly though. Just over a minute to go in this race, and Matt Daly, comfortable 15-second lead. I did think, could we have a bit of a fight on our hands between himself and Knief, given Knief's really impressive one-lap pace in this session so far in this race weekend, and it is the one-lap pace that still goes the way of Colin Knief for 2 minute 5.8 in this race. So he actually improves on his qualifying time with that one. That's just how impressive his one-lap pace is. Unfortunately, he just hasn't been able to string it together in a nice, sensible, boring race for himself. He's put on a fantastic race for us, so I'm very thankful for that, but unfortunately things not quite working out his way in this one. 30 seconds left on the clock then. And as it stands, we will indeed be on our penultimate lap of the race at the moment. A very long lap here, of course. So before we head through the likes of Nelson or Bombhole, I suspect, in fact, maybe into Coram, we will be... Nah, not quite that. We'll say Nelson or Bombhole will probably be around about the marker where we can say we are indeed on the penultimate lap of this race. There are some very long straights here at Snetterton. Of course, a real test of the engines, of the fuel capacities on these cars. I imagine these old GCA 1750s absolutely drinking around here this evening. So we head on through Bombhole into Coram. We go with Matt Daly. He gets ready to start the penultimate, in fact not the penultimate lap of this race, the final lap of this race as he heads onto the centre straight and through Murray's now. We'll use this opportunity to jump on board with Matt Daly if we can in just a moment. No, we're going to look at myself instead. That's not what we want. No one wants the camera cart. There we go. That's what now I was after. Here we go then. He can see drivers, so get watching if you want some pointers. Into Montreal we go. Lots of understeer primarily, followed by oversteer. But we continue on through Palmer in just a moment. On to the final lap we go. Plenty of... I do get the feeling that these cars aren't quite as enjoyable to drive as they once were in terms of how they started this race, although they were probably very heavy at the start of this race. If you actually look at Matt Daly's predicted time for this lap, it's looking rather impressive. A 2 minute 5.7 as things stand, but I'm sure some time could well be scrubbed off here, although he's certainly putting in a very energetic performance, is Matt Daly in this one. That fantastic run through Brundle and Nelson there. You don't get a true sense of it until you're in the car. I imagine in real life it's even better. Snetterton's one of those circuits where I've actually never visited, so it's very much on the wish list at some point. But I can't imagine Matt Daly's going to be wishing for much more in this one. We run through Coram and in to Murray's for one last time in race one here. A finish with a flourish, I suspect, is what we're going to see, because it's been a great drive for Matt Daly, unfazed by the challenge he enjoyed earlier on in this race, and he takes the race victory. Congratulations, Matt Daly. Another impressive showing as he extends his championship lead. The car in yellow, I shouldn't rename it the yellow streak pretty much. It's that fast sometimes, but not to be outdone. Not too far behind at all when you consider how his race started. Colin Knief in the end brings it home in P2. A decent haul of points there. Hopefully things turn around in race 3. And then rounding out the podium after a fantastic battle is Andrew Whitehead and that driver who's battling with Miles Davis. Miles Davis brings it home for 4th, and again, some further points. Jack Hodson completes the top 5 in this race. Then we have a small, very small wait indeed, for Alan Matthews to cross line in P6, and then it will be Andy Webb classified P7 in the end. Steve Knight has made it home into P8. That car's looking like it's limping. Not sure if he's low on fuel or anything's gone awry there. But what a drive for Matt Daly. We now get some victory drifts, which is fantastic to see. I think we're going to wait for the end of race 2 for some proper victory donuts. But let's enjoy some victory drifts. Well, with a little bit of a twin cam roar there to sign things off. Thank you very much. That's courtesy of Matt Daly. He slides his way down the Bentley straight now. A big thank you for that, Matt. That brings an end to race 1, as I say. And stay tuned. In just a few minutes, we get ready for race 2, our reverse grid race. Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, on the grid and ready for race 2, our reverse grid race. Just over 30 seconds now until lights out. Here's the order. It's Andy Webb and Alan Matthews on row 1, followed by Jack Hodson, Miles Davis completing row 2. Then we have Andrew Whitehead and Colin Knief completing row 3 in 5th and 6th respectively. Then we have Matt Daly and Steve Knight completing the final row of the grid. So Matt Daly having enjoyed a victory in race 1, has to work his way back up from the back of the pack in this one. This will be a bit of a redemption drive, I suspect, for the likes of Matthews and Andy Webb, showing us what they can do at the start of this race now that the order has been flipped, which is why we like reverse grid racing so much, or at least one of the many reasons. Sure, there's going to be plenty of action. We do have 6 red lights on the gantry, and now the revs begin to rise. And we are away for race 2 here this evening. It's a slightly boggy start for Andy Webb, who is under threat. In fact, it's already surpassed by the likes of Jack Hodson. Miles Davis worked their way on through. So does Miles Davis. So does Andrew Whitehead. So does Colin Knief. So does Matt Daly. One slightly askew start there for Andy Webb has cost him big time there. It wasn't even made it. It just goes to show how competitive we are at the first phases of these races. Bit of contact going on in the mid-pack there, but Alan Matthews controlling things nicely for the time being. Hodson's up into second, but is very much under pressure from Colin Knief, who has at least negotiated Montreal a little bit more comfortably than he had the first time around in race 1. But here we go, it's Knief up into third, putting pressure on Hodson. This is fantastic news if you're Matthews, because the more that Hodson and Knief continue to battle it out, continue to occupy the track by their battling, the more that Matthews can just break away while the rest of the pack is stuck in the skirmishes in the mid-pack. At least this is great news, as I say, for Alan Matthews. Knief on the attack, as he has been on a number of occasions so far this evening, and that's a big one for Andy Webb. In fact, no, that isn't Andy Webb. No, that is Andy Webb. That's a bit of netcode. Ignore that one there, folks. He should still be negotiating the track quite nicely on his end, so we do hope to catch up with him in a more comfortable spot on the circuit at some point later this evening, or a little bit further into this race nonetheless. Matthews continues on then with a nice 1.5 second gap in all of the to-do. Knief has found a way past Jack Hodson and is now going to be hunting down Alan Matthews on the Bentley straight. Now heads through Brundle there, one of the trickiest corners to negotiate in my eyes, because it is, well, I say tricky, one of the most rewarding corners to negotiate. Perhaps I should phrase it like that, because it's high speed, high energy, and it does slow right down immediately afterwards. So very impressive stuff there for the drivers to negotiate. Have a look at Matt Daly, though. He's having a look down the inside on Andrew Whitehead. Not too far behind as well is Miles Davis. The yellow and red liveried cars putting on an attack against the white and red liveried car as we head onto the centre straight once more. Davis having a look around the outside of Matt Daly. What these two drivers might be wanting to do is apply the endurance racing strategy to this one, folks, and just thinking, let's work together, let's not have our own battle, let's try and get shut of Andrew Whitehead, and then we can try and have our own battle. What I suspect is the case, though, is that Miles Davis could be really benefiting from the pace that Matt Daly has, and could be using Matt Daly as a bit like the point on one of those old Roman battleships, just kind of barrage on through, just kind of break up the pack, and then Miles Davis can enjoy the spoils of that as well and just side on past. 22 minutes on the clock then in this one. Matthews, sorry, no, it is Alan Matthews. I got that right that time. Matthews still leads us ahead of Knief. Then we have Hodson under threat from Andrew Whitehead. Whitehead in 4th at the moment. Hodson clinging on to what would be a very strong 3rd position here as it stands. But we still have plenty of this race to go. Here we can see Whitehead really beginning to put that pressure on down the Bentley straight now. It's Hodson who is shaping up to be losing out here as we head into Brundle. Hanging it down the inside there. Fantastic move by Andrew Whitehead. The gap opened up for him. Textbook stuff, really. It's Whitehead up into 3rd position in this race. Knief is obviously clear of this pack and is in fact closing down on Alan Matthews. Heads through Coram, gets a little bit closer still. It's Whitehead in 4th. Hodson in 5th, Hodson in 4th, Daly down in 5th because Miles Davis appears to have had a couple of issues, but we're going to head back up to the top end of the pack. The timing system's having a moment to catch up with things, and Colin Knief's having a moment to catch up with Alan Matthews on the start-finish straight here as we head on to the next lap. 20 minutes to go in this race. Knief hangs it around the outside. A fantastic lap for Knief there. Absolutely making amends for race 1 is this one, isn't it, folks? Bit of contact going on in the back end of the pack. Daly and Hodson having a bit of a coming together, and there is Miles Davis off and into the distance. I have seen airplane crashes like that before at Richards in the AROC Racing Leagues. Davis is another one to add to that list, and unfortunately that tumbles him back down to 8th position in this reverse grid race. Matthews still clinging on to the race lead as we run through Palmer into Agostini in just a moment. Here are the braking markers for you in a minute, folks, as we go side by side, nearly making contact. This is typical touring car stuff. Save that for next week, folks, although, of course, these are historic touring cars in words, so by all means, go! Oh dear, that's an odd one. Jack Hodson's gone for the Australia spec and has decided to just appear on his roof, just all of a sudden, out of the blue. That was an interesting one. Apologies there, Jack, tumbling down the order. What could have been a really good race and what started off very well indeed comes to a bit of a bitter end very early on. Here we go then, side by side are Alan Matthews and Colin Knief heading on to the Bentley straight. Knief on the attack, Matthews on the defence. They nearly make contact there. They are so close together. Watch out for Whitehead, who's been brought into the mix as well. We head into Brundle. It's going to be a close one. Matthews leads us. Knief heads on through into Nelson. And we have further... I just love some of these Matthews defensive drives. They look like proper old school, old-fashioned racing. Proper elbows out stuff. Matthews always puts on a brilliant show for us, and I do thank him for that. I know his fellow competitors love a bit of a battle with him as well. As we head into Murray's now as well. Whitehead having a look down the inside. Potentially that might have cost him a little bit of time though, and who's it cost him time to? It's only Matt Daly. Matt Daly, who's side by side as we run through Murray's, gets a slight nose out in front, but has the outside for Richards, which, to be fair, we've seen works in the past. He doesn't need to worry about that, though, because Whitehead files on behind him, as meanwhile, Knief has a look down the inside into Richards and takes the race lead. It's all going on into the first corner here, folks. Knief leads us by 0.3 of a second now. Matthews settles for second. Isn't going to go for any major attacks, I suspect, because it's now just focused on trying to maintain second in this one, as Daly has a big swapper, is able to catch it. Whitehead loses out on the run through Montreal, settles for 4th, and Daly is on a knife edge here as he tries to climb his way further up the podium order. We head through Palmer into Agostini in just a moment. Knief leading the charge after a hard-fought climb through the order in this reverse grid race start so far. Your top 4 then occupying 2 seconds out on track. Matthews having a bit of a deep run into Agostini and Hamilton there. He continues on in P2, but is very much under threat from Matt Daly. Now, Matt Daly, who is not shy of those curbs at all, which is a surprise given that we saw him occupying the airspace above Snetterton on a number of occasions in race 1 and in qualifying for that matter as well. This time out though, Matt Daly is not relenting. He's not showing any fear at all. Heads on to the Bentley straight in 3rd position. Might benefit from a slight bit of a tow as we head down towards Brundle, and Knief back in what I'm sure feel is his rightful spot after qualifying. And all of a sudden, Matthews has become Colin Knief's closest compatriot out on track as Knief takes a bit too much of the sausage curb anymore, and that could have gone very wrong indeed. The car was up onto 2 wheels, but he was able to keep hold of it, was Colin Knief. And as I say, Matthews all of a sudden has effectively become Knief's teammate here, as Matthews will be doing his utmost to keep Daly behind for his own race, and Knief will be egging him on, trying to say, yes, Matthews, keep Matt Daly behind, because the more that you do that, the more it looks comfortable for me in this race lead. But Matthews, that's a fantastic time to go to that camera shot, folks. Matthews has to dive into the pits there, has to teleport back to the pits, which will tumble him completely down the order because he took too much curb into that final corner. Straight onto the roof for Alan Matthews. What a shame that he actually hasn't lost the lap because of where he teleported from. He hasn't lost the lap, crucially. Very important indeed in his race, so he could still score some decent points. As we see Whitehead in the background there, actually going quite deep into Montreal. That's cost them a lot of time, and all of a sudden it's taken 10 minutes in this race, folks. But what we are going to see is that battle between Colin Keith and Matt Daly. That battle that we saw in qualifying, that we thought we were going to get in race 1, we do now get in race 2, folks. This is going to be a big one. This is a battle for the championship. In fact, your top 3 in this race are all in the mix for the championship here. So we'll see how things shape up. Colin Keith then leading the charge, 1.2 seconds down to Matt Daly, and Andrew Whitehead just a little bit behind as well. 15 minutes left to go in this race. As I say, we will take a brief opportunity to take a look at how the championship is shaping up after race 1 this evening. After a formidable performance in race 1, Matt Daly extends his championship lead with 272 points. Isn't able to replicate that as it stands, because he's currently P2 in this race, but 272 points to his name at the moment. 220 points to Andrew Whitehead, who's currently 3rd in this race. A very good job indeed, but that gap, as I say, has expanded to Matt Daly, and as it stands will continue to expand. But Colin Keith will be closing up on the likes of Whitehead, on the likes of Matt Daly, if things stay the way they are as he runs through Murray's now. Keith leading this race. It's Alan Matthews in P4. He would have been set to make that look even more comfortable in this race if he kept up with the fantastic P2 running that he started this race with. Unfortunately, with a small mistake through Murray's, it hasn't shaped up that way at all. In fact, Miles Davis will be closing up that gap as it stands to Alan Matthews in the championship, and will be fighting for P4. So that's going to be a battle to watch out for in the standings, folks. We head on down to Andy Webb, P4 in this race, P6 in the championship. In a bit of no man's land in the standings, 102 points to his name, so has surpassed that into that triple-digit number. But we'll be pretty comfortable with that, I am sure. Let's not forget, it's his first season in the AROC Racing League, so a P6 is by no means anything to stick your nose up at all. Then we have Steve Knight, currently P5 in this race, P9 in the standings with 48 points to his name, so a P5 will actually really boost him as things shape up. We'll be closing up on the likes of Guy Swarbrick and separating himself away from the likes of Young or Cole. Then we have the aforementioned Miles Davis, P6 in this race, P5 in the standings, having a bit of an off here as he did on the run into Riches. And Miles Davis will be adding a few points to his roster, but will actually be, as I say, will also be closing up on the likes of Alan Matthews. Then we have Jack Hodson. Jack Hodson currently 7th in the standings and 7th in this race. 82 points to his name. We'll add a couple to his tally after all is said and done in this one. But as I say, all the big points kind of margins, all of the big questions are all for those top 3 positions. Daly leads it at the moment, is 2nd in this race, and the driver leading this race at the moment is 3rd in the standings. Keith heads through Brundle and Nelson. At the moment, 1.8 seconds is the margin. Let's compare their pace then, as we do cross the halfway marker in this race, this second race of the evening. At the moment, Keith is flying along. Purple Sector 1 this time out. Fast lap of the race so far at 2:06.2. For Keith, but for Matt Daly, it's a 2:05.8. So Matt Daly is now beginning to show that impressive one-lap pace that Keith has shown throughout the weekend. That was actually performed on the last lap for both of these drivers. We'll see what Keith can do. I suspect it was going to be a really strong one this time out if it wasn't for that run through Murray's there, where he was up onto 2 wheels. As was Daly, though, by the looks of things. Steve Knight had an issue out on track. He's visiting the countryside of Norfolk here, so he is able to continue it on. Nearest karting circuit that I've visited to Snetterton will be Ella Park, in fact, which is a fantastic day out worth of racing. In fact, a couple of corners at Ella Park, which do remind me of some of the running here at Snetterton. So very interesting to see the comparisons there. It's nowhere near myself. I've never driven for so long off the motorway network in the UK, I don't think. The motorway just ends and you've still got hours and hours of B road, one of which completely finished the top mounts and shock absorbers in my BMW. So not entirely fond memories of Norfolk, it must be said, but I'm pleased to report that they've all been replaced now. Great expense. So hopefully now, well, the car does in fact drive lovely, but it should survive Norfolk if ever I do need to head back here for the likes of Ella Park or even Snetterton itself as well. Keith is expanding his lead in this race, I must add. Last lap of 2 minutes 6.1, Daly in the 2 minutes 7s. Knief controlling this race nicely, doesn't have that fastest lap of the race overall, but still doing a very remarkable job out there as things stand. Eight minutes left to go in this race, and the gap between Daly and Knief staying pretty consistent at this point, it must be said. Knief controlling things nicely, although Daly closing down that last lap with a blistering performance at 2 minute 5.779, which is the fastest lap we have seen overall across all sessions this race weekend. He's done it late on in race 2. Really impressive stuff from Matt Daly. When that fatigue is beginning to creep in, Matt Daly not faltering, and in fact the gap was staying consistent. It's closing up now. We've got 7 minutes to go in this race, and if this momentum remains the same, we are going to have a battle, a closer battle for the race lead here tonight, folks, which will be great news, which will be fantastic stuff to see between two championship incumbents, of course. Anyone watching along, I do want to say a very warm welcome. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you do have any comments, questions or queries, do make sure to get those in to the comments. I am always monitoring the comments. I've got them in a little side portion of my screen here. There'll be some changes for the next race, hopefully, of the TCR Championship. So round 8 for that category, where we'll have a little bit more data analysis and insight coming up on at least my screens and potentially your screens as well. I've been doing some digging around with that one there, so it'd be interesting to add a little bit of an extra spice to the broadcast that you do get to at least, I hope, enjoy, but certainly watch along as well. So big thank you to all of you who tune in, who might watch back later, and as I say, any comments, questions or queries you might have, any suggestions for improvements, make sure that you by all means do get them in, because as I say, we're welcoming feedback, and I'm always staying tuned on that front as well. 6 minutes to go in this race then, and Daly, after looking like he's beginning to build a charge, is just relenting ever so slightly as we headed through the middle phase of the lap. It'll be interesting to see where he's making that big difference. Sector 1 was a blistering performance for Daly. It must be said, a 2-minute 12.404. Knief posts a personal best through the middle sector, whereas Daly was a little bit off, and we saw that run through Murray's then. I suspect it could be the same case as well. It's impressive, such a long circuit here at Snetterton. And we end up with such a tiny Sector 3. It's of 11 seconds with such a comparatively... The Sector 1 here is longer than some of the laps that we've visited on other circuits in their entirety. I think it's just a symptom of, obviously, the different layouts, of the varying layouts that we do have here at Snetterton, where the timing markers are out on track. 5 minutes to go in this race. Knief leads us from Daly still, of course, as you're seeing on your screens, folks. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll jump on board with a driver to have a look at how things are shaping up out on track. Why do we have a bit of a comparison? We've already seen Matt Daly. Let's go on board with our race leader then at the moment, Colin Knief. Let's see how he negotiates a lap here at Snetterton. As we see the run through Hamilton here, this brings us back through onto Williams in just a moment. Kiss the apex there, get the car ever so slightly up into the air. That was the run through Hamilton before we now head on and down towards Williams at the one of the fastest points of the circuit, down towards the Bentley Straight. Of course, here we go then on to that aforementioned straight. You can see the revs climb past 7,000 RPM in these cars, which was sky high for me. Obviously, you know, these are race prepared cars, but these fabulous little twin cam engines do just love to rev. If you've had the opportunity to experience one in a real life Alpha, you know just how brilliant they are. Never driven one myself, it must be said. So I do hope to change that at some point. I've driven its later relative. Of course, I've driven very briefly a twin spark, it must be said, and then, well, it's certainly a twin cam, but it's not an Alpha twin cam. My old Mito Veloce, cracking little 16 valve 1.4, a little bit gutless, it must be said. Not much torque on offer, and only 95 horsepower, which admittedly for an NA 1.4 isn't the worst, but it had all the character that you'd expect from a little Italian twin cam. You'd absolutely have to wring its neck in, and then it climbed on cam beautifully at the top end of the rev range. It was perhaps a little bit challenged trying to haul around a Mito, which is quite a sizable and heavy hatchback, what it is, but short little snickety 6-speed box car that loves to climb on cam. It was a great recipe. So if that is anything to go by, I'm sure the proper Alpha engines of days gone by are even more impressive to experience. I do now experience a very different piece of Alfa Romeo engine machinery in the form of my QV Multia these days, which is a lot more similar in nature to our touring cars that we'll be enjoying here at this circuit next week, and it will be interesting to compare their pace between the historic and the touring car as we head into next week's round. That's a lap then on board with Colin Knief. Why don't we jump on board with Andrew Whitehead, another front-running driver who we haven't jumped on board with inside so far this race meet. We're in then with Andrew Whitehead as he heads through towards the end of Sector 1. And through it's Williams we go. 10 laps into this race then. The lap counter nowhere near as high as the likes of Knock Hill or anywhere else similar, obviously owing to the much longer lap here. But we head on to the Bentley Straight in P3 we stand for the time being. Do want to have a quick look then while we're heading down that straight. Andy Webb and Miles Davis are our closest drivers, our rookie drivers who were close together for the grid start of race 1 and close in qualifying, and then they've pretty much not been close at all for the rest of the race weekend. Do find themselves occupying a similar part of the circuit once more. But we'll head back aboard with Andrew Whitehead as he completes his lap with just under 2 minutes left on the clock.
Less than a minute to go on the clock then for this reverse grid race. Let's have a look at how things are shaping up. Knief currently heading around and on to Williams and through Williams rather in just a moment. This means this will, much like who we saw in race 1, this will be the penultimate lap of the race on lap number 11. And some lap traffic to encounter for Colin Knief. Just behind is Matt Daly, but Knief overall having the measure of Daly in this one. What could have been though, if it weren't for that unfortunate start to race 1, Knief could have really closed up in the championship standings, or at least made a decent dent. As it stands, they're going to be even in terms of points, which is, you know, could be much worse than that, I suppose. But yeah, I'm sure Knief will be leaving this one, ruining the exit of Montreal there, because I think with the pace he has demonstrated this race weekend, this really was one for Knief to benefit from. It still has been great to see these two drivers going toe-to-toe, enjoying the little bit of a battle, even if it hasn't been out-and-out side-by-side action between these two at least on the track. We head down the centre straight then and get ready to start the final lap of this race weekend. And Knief runs down through Richards. Just ahead is Alan Matthews, and what a turnaround in fortunes this has been for Alan Matthews. The only lap driver will be Alan Matthews in this race, and they're occupying the same part of the track, Knief and Matthews, as it now stands. As Matthews gets a big tank slapper on, is able to correct it, very fortunately there. But yeah, as I say, these two drivers now occupying the same corner. They were doing that at the start of this race, but it was in a battle for P1. And now, of course, Matthews settles for P8. It's a couple of points for his troubles, but not where he wanted to be and not where he's capable of being, of course, in this one. Just such is the way of racing sometimes. So Matthews, I'm sure, will regroup and get ready for next week's race here at Snetterton, and, of course, the next race of the GCA 1750s, which will be taking place at Brands Hatch in a fortnight's time. Infamous racing venue, of course. Very much looking forward to that one. And Matthews tried to take avoiding action, make sure he does not get lapped. In fact, he gets lapped for another time, so he did take a lap with that pit lane teleport earlier on. I should add, by the way, didn't quite clock this, and apologies I missed it, folks, as he heads on to the Bentley Straight, Colin Knief, a 2-minute 5.529, has nearly found half a second on his qualifying time, folks. Has found half a second on P2 in qualifying. That is a huge margin. That is a chasm down to the next fastest car that we have seen this race weekend. What a drive from Colin Knief this evening, folks. As I started this final couple of laps by saying, what could have been in race 1? It was still a really good drive. It was P2 in the end, of course, but it could have been just that, a little bit more. But I'm sure he's still going to be happy with it either way as he heads around Coram, has 3.5 seconds against his rival, and with a blistering previous lap, he's not going to be able to quite match it, but I'm not sure Colin Knief really cares, because he heads on to this final straight for one last time this race evening with a blistering performance here at Snetterton. Colin Knief takes race 2 victory. Congratulations, Colin. A remarkable drive in this reverse grid action. Matt Daly, not to be forgotten, brings it home P2, another commendable finish, and continues on his fantastic showing in the championship so far. Andrew Whitehead rounds out the podium then in P3. He'll be pleased with that one, I am sure. Another podium to add to his efforts for this evening's racing as he continues on his efforts in the championship. Now, Andy Webb heads through the final corner. Race 1, a race to forget for Andy Webb. This time around, it's much better in the reverse grid stuff, and Andy Webb will be bringing it home in P4 with a decent number of points to add to his tally. And then we do have a little bit of a wait. Race 2 perhaps not quite going as well as race 1 did for Miles Davis, but I'm sure we'll still be pleased with the top 5 finish and a decent haul of points to add to his tally. Miles Davis heads down the centre straight once more, completes the top 5 there, a decent haul points to take away from that. Then Steve Knight will be classified P6, and Jack Hodson, up on 2 wheels, will be classified P7, and Alan Matthews is classified P8. That brings an end to the racing action here then this evening. Thank you very much for watching this evening, folks. We'll catch you next week back here again in our Juliettas, and of course in a fortnight's time for the next round of historic racing action. Thank you very much for watching this evening, folks. I will leave you with some more Matt Daly drifting action to sign us off. That was a really nice one, I must say, Matt Daly, so thank you very much. Thank you very much for watching this evening, folks, and good night.